To replace dull combs and cutters with sharp combs and cutters, first loosen the tension on the tension knob. Slightly loosen your comb screws on the bottom of the machine. Take your comb, slide it underneath the comb screws. Tighten your comb screws just enough to hold your comb in place. To attach a cutter to your shearing machine, the first thing to recognize is on a shearing fork, there are points on the front of the fork and pegs on the back of the fork. And these have to go in the appropriate spot on your cutter. The points will go in the small round hole on the tips of the cutter, and the pegs of the fork will go in the oblong hole, the larger hole, at the back of the cutter. So, place your cutter underneath the forks, making sure that the small points of your cutter fit into those small round holes at the tips of your cutter, and that the pegs of the fork are in the oblong hole at the back of the cutter. Now that you have your cutter in place, make sure that the points are down in the hole. Apply slight tension on your cutter until you feel some resistance. We're now ready to set the correct lead on your shearing machine. On most combs, there is what's called a shearer's bevel, and it is the point from the tip of the comb to the end of the bevel. And it's important on these types of combs that the cutter tip sit 1/8 of an inch behind the shearer's bevel. And I'll show you how to do that. Right now, the tips of my cutter are sitting over the end of the shearer's bevel. So to correct that, we'll turn the machine over. Remember, we didn't tighten down the comb screws on the comb entirely. We should be able to take our screwdriver and move the comb upward. If you put too much tension on, that's fine. Just loosen it a little bit. Move each side of the comb until you think you've got the lead set correctly. We'll turn the machine back over. And if we look at the tip of the cutter to the end of the shearer's bevel, we see that we didn't move the comb quite enough. So we'll turn the machine back over, move the comb up just a little bit more, and see how we did. Now the tips of the cutter are behind the shearer's bevel all the way across the comb. And we should be ready to set our tension correctly. So we'll turn the machine back over. If we look at the edge of the head with the edge of the comb, we try to keep this even all the way across. And right now this side of my comb is a little high. So if we just want to move the comb back into place just a little bit, adjust as needed. Turn the machine back over for a final time. Make sure we're happy with the lead that we set from the cutter to the comb. If we are, and our points are still in place on our cutter, let's go ahead and tension the comb screws all the way. And now we should have the correct lead set on our combs and cutters. To set the correct tension on your shearing machine is not always black and white. It depends on the animals that you're shearing and your shearing environment. But when we have a new set of combs and cutters, to set the tension the first time, apply tension to your tension knob until noticeable resistance is felt. Then turn the tension knob a half a turn more. Go ahead and apply 3 to 5 drops of oil across the tips of the combs and cutters. And now we're ready to start the machine. Throughout the shearing process, you may have to adjust the tension. So as your combs and cutters wear, you will probably have to apply more tension to your tension knob. Remember, it's about finding the sweet spot. Don't tighten it down so that you create a lot of heat throughout your head and your combs and cutters, but we don't want to loosen it so much in that you're going to let the cutter come loose or that the comb and cutter won't shear properly.